The next thing is depressants. So those would include opioids, sedative, hypnotics, and alcohol. And so this kind of has the other direction where it can be understimulated. You go very slow. You may be really slow to react or process different things. And so with the previous one and this one, it's important to kind of know that that's how your body and your processing is working to begin with. So that is going to impact how you are engaging in like intimate acts. Onwards, psychedelics. Here's a bunch of examples, and the general idea is that like it could create hallucinations, but it pretty much alters your perceptions of sensation and reality. And so this happens through a lot of different ways. I would recommend like looking up into the science of it. And here's some physical effects. And so again, so one of the things that you might want to think about, especially if you're engaging in psychedelics, is that the concept of boundaries sometimes can get very like fuzzy and hard for like your own self to grasp. So it's really good to have an intentional like time ahead of them, like before you start, to set down, like to think about your own boundaries and set down what your intentions are for the interactions that you have, because that's going to be easier for you to grasp onto than like, oh, I can't do this or I can do this. So you can kind of work with that, or some people find a lot of comfort in just having really hard boundaries set ahead of time. And it just depends on how it interacts with you. Moving on. So Sextasy is the combination of Viagra and MDMA. So whenever you're combining any substances or just combining things that may be more concerning, I would highly, or just combining things in general, I would recommend knowing how one impacts you and how the other impacts you, and then seeing how the two impact you together, because the way that they both interact with each other may not be the same as how they individually interact with you, but it's still like a good reference point. Like if, for example, you know that when you're in MDMA, you only want to dance and you don't want to fuck, like that's something that's probably not going to change if you mix it with something else, but you don't really know until you know. So here's how it works. MDMA actually impacts multiple neurotransmitters. One that impacts arousal, the other one that impacts brain reward and pleasure centers, and the last thing which impacts like wakefulness. So it can keep you very much awake. It also impacts your central nervous system, and you can get very dehydrated. So please make sure to drink water, even if you like find ways to like remind yourself, because you might forget. And then, so one of the downsides of it is every sensation feels so good that there's people who may have like trouble either getting to an orgasm, or people with penises may have trouble getting hard. And that's like completely okay. And I think that that's kind of where I'm coming from Release the Conceptions of Sex, because it's more about the act of intimacy and bonding between you and the other individual than it is about achieving an orgasm. But if you're still wanting to interact with penises, or if you just want to try some other parts, you can try Viagra. That it is not available over the counter, I don't think, like specifically like brand name Viagra, but yeah, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And I would like to point to this chart for physical effects of it. And I think one of the important things with substances is to do your research. I have a website at the end, it's called Arrowid. And it will like look into how that impacts your body, and whether your body, like if you know that you have heart problems, it might not be a good idea to mix Viagra and ecstasy, because that's going to cause a lot of heart issues. Whereas like if you know that, yeah, so that's kind of, I want you to think about that before you engage. And then again, like if you mix ecstasy, it's kind of hard for you to remember to engage in safe sex sometimes. So that's something to think about, and either have ways for you to like either know that you're like good at setting boundaries when you are in those space, or have ways to like kind of make sure that you take care of yourself. Like for example, setting an alarm, or having your friends be like a point of reference. And then Viagra only actually works if you're actively being stimulated. So that's something to think about.